You're listening to the Guitar Heroes podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Guitar Heroes podcast number 6. My name's Phil Walker and I'm going to I'm here with my white Strat and hello Lee Williams.
Hello, good morning, chaps. Good morning. What can I play?
And thankfully we're also here with Chris Taylor. Hello, Chris.
Hello. I don't have anything Christmassy planned, but...
Oh, yeah. Oh, snazzy.
Sorry, I'm being Mr. Christmas here. Has everybody got their Christmas decorations up?
I don't actually. It's Amy's birthday on the 11th. So we wait until that's out the way, and then we start Christmas on the 12th.
Oh, okay. Lee, have you got your baubles out?
They're always out, Phil. You wouldn't know that, though, because we're still on Zoom, so you can only see the top half. Yes, we're starting to. Yeah, it's December 1st today, so getting in the spirit. We all need cheering up after this interesting year, don't we? So, the tree's up and getting the decks out, and Bublé's coming out of his cave, singing in the background. Mince pies galore.
Setzer for me, I'm afraid. It's the Setzer's Christmas extravaganza every year. And Brad Paisley's got a Christmas album.
Has he really?
Has he?
Yeah, and he wrote a song on it called James Penguin.
Right.
That's got you on it. Yeah. Is it? Yeah. All I'll say is, guys, check out Brad Paisley's Christmas album. If you don't like Christmas music, don't. You'll hate it. But if you do like Christmas music, it's really good.
I love Christmas music. I was actually thinking, guys, maybe not this week, obviously, because we've got other things planned for today, but we should do a Christmas episode where we discuss Christmas guitar, because there's so much great. If anyone listened to last week, they would have heard, Chris, I think your nomination for Brenda Lee's Rocking Around the Christmas Tree, that was a great recommendation.
I know.
And it got me thinking about other examples of fantastic Christmas guitar playing. There's so much good stuff out there.
There is. Well, let's save it. Let's save that, because I think that's going to be a cracking episode. And if there are people out there that don't like Christmas, tough, go listen to something else, because we love Christmas here, don't we?
We do.
We do.
We love it. I did have a complaint by Ebenezer Scrooge, who lives at the back of my house.
Oh, right. Go on.
Well, the back of my house is all, because I tend to go OTT. I mean, when have I ever not? And I've got nice icicles running down the fence, and I've got lights on top of the shed and everything. And he came round last night. He goes, "Your Christmas lights?" I was like, "Oh, here we go." I said, "Yes, Ebenezer." He said, "The flash, they kept me and my wife awake." I said, "Well, close your curtains and shut your eyes. It's usually the best way to sleep, isn't it?" And so we've come to a compromise, and I'm only going to leave them on for 23 hours of the day now.
Oh, very good of you.
So, it is, isn't it? It is.
Yeah, I can see your Christmas tree there, actually. You've got a little one in the studio.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've had this Christmas tree for 20-odd years, I think. It's my little friend. Yeah, I like it. It's one of those fibre optical things that changes colour. It's lovely.
My beveragino today is actually a coastal Christmas blend of coffee as well.
Is it? Where did you get in this stuff?
The good folks that shout out to Fountain Rock Coffee of Weymouth. That's they've done a special Christmas blend, and I'm drinking it today from my Back to the Future mug. After
they do decaf.
Ooh.
They do actually. They do. Yeah. Check it out. It's good.
It says real reindeer droppings. Fantastic. Yes, lovely. Okay, well, I guess I'm in the hot seat. We're gonna do a Chris's corner a bit later on. Chris, whenever you feel like you're ready to be put in your corner, just put your hand up.
If I can get a word in, I'll let you know.
It's like, yeah. It's Chris's ace card, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Right, it's a timeout. Maybe Lee, shut up.
He can only take so much of you and me, Phil, and then he just needs to play that card. It's just, he's gone for it. He's played Chris's corner, and then we have to shut up.
I mean, if he does more than one per episode, that means he doesn't get one the episode the week after, does it?
Oh, that's not allowed. No, he's only got one card per episode.
Oh, can I
save them? OTT, Chris.
Can I save them up? I'm gonna save them up. I'm gonna go 5
You're saving
episodes.
them up?
Yeah, no, and I'll have 5. Literally, and a whole episode would just be Chris's corner.
It'll just be you. Me and Phil won't even bother joining. It'll just be Chris in a room on his own.
I'll just stare at the Christmas tree for an hour while you just talk about whatever you want for us. Yeah,
and I'll be playing with my baubles.
Well, why not? We all have. Anyway, this is it's a bit of a geeky episode, is this? But I wanted to bring this up at some point. I want to talk about modelling, and I don't mean the, when you shake your little tush on the catwalk. I don't mean that type of modelling. I mean amp and speaker and effects modelling and what have you, because that is plays a big part in the story of Guitar Hero's sound. And obviously we are endorsed by Line 6, so I am going to name drop them quite a lot. When you do
Line 6.
But to be fair, I've been a Line 6 user long before I ever worked with them or they endorsed us. But I mean, amp modelling for me started, I think it was around 1997 when I got my Rocktron Chameleon. I used to have a huge guitar rack, and it was 12U. I had compressors and power amps and everything like that in there. It weighed a ton. And I just one day woke up going, this is nonsense. Playing to people in these venues that, that they don't give a toss. I've just broken my back carrying all this gear in. They just want to hear me play. Hey. Oh, sorry, I did it, didn't I? I did it. But so yeah, I thought I'm going to make life easy for myself, and I got this Rocktron Chameleon, and it was absolutely rubbish. Looking back at the time, it was amazing because you could just DI. I think it had a speaker sim on there, speaker simulator or emulator, I think they called it. And then I upgraded to an Oberheim unit, which I think was worse. And then it was
downgraded.
The ground. Yeah. You think you're doing something good, don't you? And you go, oh no, I've sold it to raise money to get this thing, and now it's too late. I'm stuck with it. But then it sort of the groundbreaking Line 6 pod came out. The kidney-shaped little red thing, and I think just about everybody's had one of those at some point, haven't they?
Yeah. I was just thinking. Obviously, we've got guitar listeners to this podcast, but maybe you should just give what would Phil's definition or description of modelling? Because we get people asking about this at shows, and obviously, if you're a guitar player, you know this stuff. But if you're not, how would you describe
That's a really
what
good
you're
point,
talking
actually.
about? Because otherwise, this podcast is not going to make much sense to those people.
Yeah, okay. So a conventional guitar rig would be a guitar, some effects pedals, and an amplifier. And what these new devices do, what we call modelling, it recreates the sound of whatever guitar amplifier you're using, maybe a Vox or a Marshall. And it does it using transistors and capacitors and
wizardry.
I call it wizardry. Yeah, a wizardry. Yeah. And it puts it into a neat little box, either a pedal board or a rack unit, and it saves you carrying all these amps around. And it emulates the sound of the speaker. So I think that's the easiest way of putting it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it is essentially that. It's a digital emulation, isn't it? But the difference is these days the emulation has got so good. It's essentially like audio green screen. In a way,
yeah,
isn't it? In the same way as movies and films, they can do things with digital technology now that they just physically couldn't go and do on location. They wouldn't have the budgets and so on. Amp modelling does the same for us, really. It allows us to carry around in a small black box 50 different amplifiers and 100 different effects pedals and deliver that sound directly to the PA system and obviously also be able to change through all those sounds. So for us, we literally couldn't do the guitar show with the real deal unless we were able to carry maybe 3 or 4 amps each, 3 or 4 bass amps, and multiple effects pedals. Like it just.
Well, I remember when we first started the show, myself and Toby, we used to have. We had the HD 500X by Line 6. We had one of those each, and we were still stuck on amps at the time as well. I had my Blues Junior limited edition thing with a separate pedal board, and Toby had a 2-Rock, which I think he's still got, and he had separate pedals as well. Yeah, lovely amp that is. And we used to sort of mix throughout the night. So some stuff I'd do on the HD 500 and other stuff I'd do do it with an amp that was mic'd up. And I've got to be quite honest, I think we lasted 2 gigs doing that, and then we just put everything on the HD 500 because it was just I don't know, it just seemed clearer. It was more, no pun intended, it was more of a direct sound.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, we're on the Helix now, the whole show's now on the Helix. But many a time we'd be at the merch stand at the end of the night, and people would come up saying, "Oh, do you keep the amplifiers off stage then? Is that because of volume?" And I'd say, "Well, no, we don't use amplifiers. We use the Line 6 Helix." And we've had to put it in our tour program. People that buy the program, it's big advert on there that we use the Line 6 Helix. I mean, it is so convincing. People do think we use amplifiers off stage. So it's
well, a lot of people do, don't they? A lot of big touring artists now. It's a difficult thing to try and capture a good sound on stage, and when you've got lots of amplifiers around and all those microphones, you've got a live drum kit. There's a lot of bleed. So for a mix engineer's point of view, having amps off the stage and isolated is a great thing. So that's become part of the norm in the touring world now, as have modelling units like the Line 6 that we use. It makes it very clean and tidy on stage, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, definitely. The thing is with touring, and especially as we come out of COVID and try enter normal life again, is that touring costs are going to be astronomical. And even people that used to have amps in ISO boxes backstage, they're probably going to have to get rid of those because, people are going to have to go from an Arctic down to an 18-tonner or an 18 down to a 7.5. And because things are going to be expensive touring when we go back. Everybody's going to be on a budget, and, the best way to do it for us is the modelling thing. I mean, we've been really, we're not tight, we when it comes to the show, we do what's necessary to put the show on. But, I mean, we've probably saved, I don't know, another half a ton, from what we'd have to take with us.
Yeah. I think it's also fair to say that the show, from a sound point of view, is actually quite an ambitious thing as well. There are plenty of bands out there that would use modelling and maybe just stick with one or two sounds for the whole night and still get a benefit from it, still get the convenience factor. But I think the whole idea of the show is quite ambitious from a sound point of view, to try and recreate, say, 40 different Guitar Heroes in one night. If you were carrying, we make a point of making the guitars the stars, so we do carry 30 or 40 guitars. We can't simulate that part of it, but to carry the equivalent guitar rigs with us as well, that even for a huge show with Arctics, that would be a big ask.
Absolutely. I know there's Trans-Siberian Orchestra as well. They're all modelling now. I should know what they have. I think is it Axe FX, and I think one of the other guys uses Digitech, but yeah, they model now. Even if a show as big as that, most people that come watch these shows, they're not really interested that using a Marshall Silver Jubilee head or cab, and do you know what I mean? They just want to hear the guitar, and I think it's kind of a little bit with our show as well that they want to see the big orange Gretsch, they want to see the 335, and the guitars are as authentic as we can get them. And that does feathering Line 6's cap there, because we've never had anybody question the guitar sounds. And that's really good.
Chris,
really
are you drinking Bucks Fizz?
No, just an orange juice with water. It's a thing I do every morning. It's just half a glass of orange juice, half a glass of water.
I thought you might have been getting in the festive mood and having a wee tipple in the morning. Anyway,
give me to the 12th, and then we kick off with. I'll be getting a little tipsy every day, I would have thought.
See what I did there, Phil? That was me bringing Chris into the conversation.
Well, I was just about to
Our
say...
silent
actually,
observer.
I was just about to say to Chris, you're fairly new to modelling, aren't you? You've always been an amp guy.
Yeah, I still am, to be honest. Like, I love, there's nothing quite like an amp. Being in the room with an amp, the compression of it and everything, and just the air it moves, something that, digital simulators don't quite get. Obviously it's not their purpose to do that, but moving from amps to something like the HX Stomp, which I've got here today, was quite a difficult move for me, because I always just thought, well, you got to use an amp, right? Because that's what they do. But the more you look into it, and for more consistency from gig to gig, going direct with something like a Helix or a HX Stomp is definitely the way to go. You can literally turn it on. You've already got your presets made. You just got to adjust the faders on your desk, and you're ready to go. Everything's already there laid up, and you can be ambitious with the sounds. Like, if you want, I did a show on a stint on a ship, and there was one particular song. I can't remember what it was, but it needed like an octave with this real heavy delay. But I'd have to get for this like 30-second part in a song, I would have to buy all these extra pedals for. Whereas I could just dial it up in this HX Stomp at no extra cost. So in that respect, it's fantastic. And
were you playing ABBA?
No, not ABBA. I haven't done any ABBA actually. I've never played any ABBA. I think it'd be great to do.
You'd make a what's the name of that one that you look like? Agneta, is it? Agneta, which one is it? Oh, sorry, Chris.
I knew where he was going with that. I knew it'd be too obvious to say Benny or Bjorn.
Yeah, but yeah,
I remember doing a gig with you. It was this time last year, actually, wasn't it?
It was,
and you were totally on your HX Stomp, and I was playing bass with you, wasn't I? And I brought my little HX Stomp as well, little bass rig. I think I had I can't remember what I was using, Ampeg rig or something, and it sounded monster out front. And you've got this tiny little black box doing it. It's great.
It's incredible, and to be honest, when you're micing up an amp and comparing it to a Helix, obviously you can't compare anything digital to the sound of an amp because it doesn't move air like an amp does. But if you're comparing a direct signal from the Helix and a mic'd up amp, I literally, it's really hard to tell the difference, and especially the audience won't really be able to tell. And I know bands like you've already mentioned, Lee, a lot of touring bands do this already. Neil Schon from Journey will have his amps backstage mic'd up. And, you compare that to a Helix going through front of house, it's really hard to tell the difference, to be honest. And
but the practicality and what you can bring, like the diversity, you're either going to have one great amp that's going to sound good, but it's going to just do that thing. Whereas the options, that's what a lot of these big bands are doing as well. They're seeing that even though they could tour with a couple of stacks or whatever, like the flexibility of being able to get the sounds that they used on their record. Like you said, Chris, just for a 30-second intro of a song, you want a 12-string phase shifting with a long tape echo. And then when the chorus kicks in, you want to flip to a Marshall with plate reverb and none of those effects. And then this bit, that flexibility, it's so hard to do with the real stuff.
And what's really great as well, I know Chris Buck, he's a guitarist on YouTube, uses the Helix as well, but he mentioned as well, because he prior to the COVID thing, he was flying a lot, something I haven't done much. I've flown to a few places gigging, but he flies quite a lot with his band. It's Buck and Evans, I believe, isn't it? And he has his Helix on a little dongle which comes with the Helix, so he just says on his equipment list he just needs a Helix, so he basically plugs in his dongle and he can upload all the sounds that he has on his Helix at home to this Helix that's on the road, and he has all his sounds. So in that sense it's great. And to be honest, you can even fly with a Helix. It comes with you can get a really good backpack for it that goes perfectly in overhead compartments. You can imagine trying
the HX Stomp, isn't it? I mean, we use the big Helix on the show. I use the rack. You guys have got the floorboards, but there's no way you could fly a rack. And with weight, unless you left your underpants at home, even the pedal board weighs.
And we know you have to carry extras of that, Phil.
I need lots of underpants on the road. I do, absolutely, especially with this illness that I've got right now.
No.
But it's just it offers so much, and for the show, trying to cover all those sounds like you said, it's perfect, absolutely ideal. And upon obviously joining the show, I bought your Helix, Phil, and I've spent hours on that thing, and I just having a great time. I'll start at 7 p.m. programming sounds, and I'll be up to like 2 a.m.
I know, Chris. You send me a text every time you nail a new sound.
It's like 4 in the morning, and Chris is going,
"This is great.
I've just really got that like 60s vibreverb sound. It's just
yeah, it's so good. All the neighbours are knocking on the walls, wanting to join in."
But at the moment, I'm going through a Plexi, Marshall Plexi, and just sounds awesome. Sounds.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great example of how convenient they are as well. We're all sat in our homes, talking over Zoom with our guitars, and we're all running through Helix and recording guitar sounds at the same time. We couldn't do that. I mean, if you had a real Marshall stack behind you right now, Chris, Christ, when you played that, it would have blown the mic for your voice and everything.
But like at the switch of a pedal, it's like, I got my Marshall, and I've also got a Klon dialed in here, which, to buy an authentic Klon is several thousand, right? I think. I just put that on and just sounds awesome. And if I wanted a bit of delay, one switch. It's great. I could change that delay if I wanted to something else. I could have a slapback. It's all there.
It's great with Line 6 as well, because they're always updating. I think we're on 3.0 now on the Helix, and they've included some really cool effects this time. They've got all the filter effects, and something that I am a little bit peeved about is they've included a acoustic simulator on there, and I need to use one on the show. And I bought one and put it in my pedal drawer, and I'm like, well, that was 150 quid down the toilet, wasn't it? Thanks, Line 6.
But yeah, you're getting so much value for money. The initial expense of a Helix, they're not cheap by any means. But the value for money, really, when you weigh it up, is incredible, because once you've got it, the updates just keep coming in free of charge. And your value for money just keeps getting bigger over time. And if there was a new Helix to come out at any point, I would totally jump on it. I just think they're just incredible products, and I think they got to be definitely the kind of leading the market, to be honest, with the Helix. I think. I mean, I haven't tried the XFX or anything, but just it's so hard to tell the difference between all of them, but I just know the Helix is just incredible. Literally,
I'm going to stick my neck on the block here, because I've heard, and Lee, you've had an XFX, but I've seen quite a few shows, because I make a point of going to watch lots of shows, because I've got running the guitar show, I've got to know what's out there, and I've got to know the competition, basically. So I'm always going to watch shows when I could, and I've seen a few shows with XFX. I'm not going to mention who they are, but I've seen a Pink Floyd show. I've seen an ABBA show. No, I haven't seen ABBA.
Was Chris in it?
Not going to see an ABBA show. Yes, he was. Yeah. Lovely bum in those lycra pants that she had on. Yeah. But no. So I've seen quite a lot of shows that have used the XFX, and I've got to be honest, I was not blown away. I was thinking, well, that's an all right guitar sound. It's not accurate. It doesn't sound. It doesn't sound very Gilmour to me, and I don't know. I've never tried an XFX. I've only heard them. I mean, Lee, over to you. You've had one.
Yeah, I had the XFX too. I thought it was great. I think the thing to remember is, arguably even more so than when you're using an amp, you are in the hands of your sound engineer. Because there's we've all done gigs where you haven't got a great sound. It's small gigs where you haven't got a great sound out the front, and what do? You just wind your amp up and go, I'll take it from here. You can't do that with a modeler. You are in the hands of the sound engineer and the mix that night. So he hears something he doesn't like, or if he wants to change something or EQ it, you can do very little about it on stage. I always found with the XFX that the sounds were, just the amp sounds were fantastic. Very, very real. And there's that old thing of the feel, which is a hard thing to describe to any non-guitar players, but there is a certain interaction that you get with your equipment, whether that be pedals, amps. There's a give and take, a push and pull that you actually feel, in inverted commas, through the guitar. And that's something that I think amp modeling has been trying to catch up with, because amps have a natural compression, a natural overdrive, and your whole playing dynamic, your whole kind of touch dynamic on the instrument interacts with that. And you might not even be aware of doing it, but the longer you play, I think that's something that you just inherently do. So when you jump over to a piece of equipment that doesn't give that, it kind of makes you go, something's not quite right there. I'm not feeling at home on this. And
actually, you've just reminded me of something there. I did the Helix Hour about a year ago, and I brought this up on that channel. And
is that on YouTube?
People, yes, it is. Yeah. When people buy these effects modelers, amp modelers, whatever it may be, the first thing they'll do is try and make it as silent as possible. Okay, now I've had an AC30, I've had Marshalls. They are not quiet amps once you start turning them up. You've got the hum, the sag, everything like that goes with a valve amp. And the first thing, like I say, people do is they put noise gates on the modeler and this and that. And I remember we had a sound guy a couple of years ago, and he was like, "Could you, your guitar's really noisy. Do you have any noise gates?" I says, "I do have noise gates, but I'm not using them." I said, "Because that takes away what a guitar amp is. Why would you spend hours and hours trying to get it to sound like a guitar amp and then put noise gates all over it to stop the actual." I mean, listen to this. This is. That's an overdriven, So you kind of got a noise with it, which is just what you need, isn't it? It makes it sound real.
You don't get especially the smell or the heat, but you do get the noise.
You get lots of smell in our show.
Exactly. I mean, there's also hybrids, aren't there? I mean, there's people now using like just amp simulation, cab simulation boxes. I know Two Notes do one. There's also the Universal Audio Aux box, I think it's called.
Yeah.
So
Boston one as well. I think they've brought one out, have they?
I'm not sure, to be honest. But you can take your amp out on the road with you and go direct to front of house with a cab simulation and bypass the speaker in your amp. But again, at the same time, you're still back at square one, aren't you? Really, I mean, you've only still got that one amp sound, haven't you? But I suppose it's.
I think that's for me where a lot of the most kind of exciting development is happening. This idea of just instead of putting your foot in one camp and saying I'm into amps or I'm into modeling, just seeing it all as tools, useful equipment, and blending it. I know. I mean, I use real pedals. I've got a few favorite pedals that I just have always used, whether I'm using an amp or not, and I still use those with my Helix. I know, Phil, you've got some pedals in your rack setup as well, and they're very often used in conjunction with the Helix. Sometimes if I'm sat at home, I might switch the amp modeling completely off on the Helix and run through my little Fender amp, but just use some of the effects on the Helix. I think that world of using things I'll tell you one of the most interesting uses I saw for that. It was on, I don't know if you saw the Pedal Show episode with Simon Neil from Biffy Clyro.
Okay.
So he was doing an interview with Dan on there, and they were just finishing up. I don't think it was the latest album, but it was the one before. They're just finishing up on that, and he just got into using a Kemper live, and he said the way he was going to use it out on the tour was take profiles of all of these amps that he used in the studio. So in the studio, he recorded with his core. I think it was a Marshall setup, but for layers and for overdubs, they might have used a Fender, an Orange, a dozen different amps. He always came back to his core amp sound, but blended in these other ones. And what the Kemper allowed him to do was to profile all these fringe amps and then take that out live. So he had his core sound of his Marshall, and then the Kemper handling all of these other amps that were maybe only used for a minute or two each. And that meant that the ultimate sound live was that extra bit closer to the record. I think stuff like that's a really cool world in which we're living in now. And I think that's only happening because modeling technology, profiling technology has got so good. 10 or 20 years ago, it probably wasn't good enough to do that. You would notice a real difference between the real thing and the modeled part. But now, very hard to tell.
It is.
Surely it's based on your situation as well. I mean, in this Zoom setup as well, going direct with a little Ajax Stomp or a Helix is perfect for this because, there's no noise to offend the neighbours or anything, and...
I've just got Christmas lights for those.
No, yeah, we got Christmas lights for those. But it depends. Like the Story Guitar Heroes. The Helix is almost like a must because we got so many sounds to cover. But if you're in an originals band, playing your own music, you have choice over the sort of sound that you want to go for, and that could be a hybrid of using an amp, cab sims, or blending, like you said, having your own Marshall stack on stage or something, and having a bit of a blend of a Fender amp in there as well.
Yeah,
going to front of house, So yeah, it's all, I suppose, dependent on your situation.
Yeah, if you're sticking with like one sound, you have your core guitar sound, and if you've got the room to travel with an amp, then fine, that's great. I would probably do that if I was playing in a band where we just had like one sound and maybe a small pedal board, then an amp is going to be great in that. But if you're playing a gig where you've got to get through a dozen or more sounds, like real different guitar changes in a night, really clean, really distorted, loads of effects, like the amount of gear you'd have to take would just make it completely impractical for most gigs and most working musicians, I think. So that's where this stuff comes in nicely.
You're listening to the Guitar Heroes podcast.
So I'm busting a gut here, Chris. I really want to hear about Chris's Corner. I can't wait to hear what you've got to say.
I don't have anything, to be honest.
What?
I'm enjoying where this.
What a disappointment!
What?
I'm so sorry.
Really? Well, maybe you could say you don't have anything to say. Can we play the jingle anyway? Because it's really nice, and then just say that you're letting our public down. Okay, cue music. Over to you, Chris.
Hello? Is there anyone there?
Oh,
I got nothing, guys. I got nothing. Let's jump back in. Let's jump back into the conversation. I was enjoying it. It was good.
Okay. Well, do you know what? I've got a bit of a rant, and I didn't do the rant last episode.
Oh, I tell you what. I do have something.
Oh,
here we go. Here we go.
Do we have to cue the music again?
Yeah, let's listen to it again. I know Lee loves it, so here we go.
Okay, cue the music.
So, playing with my Les Paul, and my G string, right, keeps going out of tune. I know this is a real common thing with Les Pauls, and
wear boxer shorts.
I know. I've considered this, but so I've been looking into it, and they're saying, if the nuts cut perfectly, that G string will stay in tune, and it's all to do with the break angle of the string, apparently. But as you're, I don't have a Les Paul here, but if you're tuning the non-wound string, so the G, the B, and the high E string, you generally turn them towards you as you're tuning them up, right? Is that what you guys do?
Yeah.
If you string them the opposite way, it increases the break angle and will allow them to stay in tune. Apparently, I did not know this, so I've tried it, and it's great. It works.
Really?
It works.
But does it not look stupid?
If it stays in tune, I don't care what it looks like. So you string the higher strings the same way you would string the wound strings.
I get what you mean. I would have to undo years of habit there, because I know what I'd be doing.
I know. It feels... I know.
I would be tuning up and it would be going flat.
Yes, that's right. It's very weird.
I do see what you're saying.
But it works. It changes the slight changes the break angle.
Hello?
Oh, we've lost
Phil, you losing Chris?
Sorry, you guys are cutting out.
Chris, we're losing you.
Hello?
Chris, come back.
It says my internet connection. No! It says
Chris,
my internet connection isn't.
So it comes to Chris's Corner and his internet packs in.
Even the internet's conspiring against Chris. They're adamant to not let him get a word in.
Chris's Corner. This is the best part of the podcast.
I think we need to roll seamlessly straight into Phil's rant here.
Yeah, okay, let's do a Phil. Oh, cue the music.
Phil's rant.
Okay, so I've got a bit of a rant. Now, Chris, you're one of the people I'm actually going to be ranting about, but it's kind of different because you've done a good thing, all right? But what really gets on my nose, I was going to say something else, but there might be under 16s listening to this. What really grinds my gears is, because I've bought quite a few guitars for the show on eBay. Okay, and a lot of say, never buy off eBay, but some of the guitars we need, you just can't find them anywhere, and you've just got to go down every channel possible to try find the guitar we need. But what I've noticed is that I hate it when people get, like, for example, say a 70s Strat or something like that, something that's quite a valuable instrument, or even a 60s, whatever, and you go on one listing, you go original Fender 60s neck. Oh, great, okay. And then below it, original Fender 60s body. Original Fender 60s Strat, and what they've done, they've got this beautiful instrument, and they're ripping it apart because they think they can get more money for it when they pull the guitar apart. And I think that's really, really sad. Now, I know, Chris, your guitar's made up from parts, isn't it?
Well, my Strat is well, the neck I had on it originally. I wasn't a massive fan of the profile of the neck anyway to begin with, but it was a desperate need of a refret. And you're looking around for a really good job. Like Absolute, I think, is around like 250 to 300. And I thought, well, I could get 200 for the neck as it is. So I used that money and bought myself an original, the American Original Series 60s Strat neck, which is the profile I like. So I thought I'd rather put the money into that. But if the frets on it were fine, I would have just kept it as is. But yeah, I'm not a fan of breaking things up really, if I can help it, because it's all made to. But the thing is with the Strats, you know, the bodies and necks are often made at different points anyway. You know, you can chop and change them. I think that's the beauty of a Strat anyway. But yeah, I think when you get something like a 60s Strat, something, I mean, breaking that up is like, it's a no-no for me.
I know Joe Bonamassa's quite big on that, isn't he? Because he's a massive vintage guitar collector, and he says he never wants to look at neck stamps and, you know, neck pocket dates and stuff like that. He says if a guitar has its neck and its body have been together for 60 or 70 years, then he's not going to be the one to come along and unscrew that just to have a look inside and see a little date stamp or something. And it's it's an interesting and valid point. But I think we're tinkerers, aren't we? Guitar players we like to fiddle. And we like to.
I've never been in that category, actually. I usually buy a guitar that's. I never change the pickups in guitars. As a rule, if you buy a guitar, then you're buying the whole thing. Do you know what I mean? The whole thing works, or it doesn't work to me. I wouldn't go, oh, well, the neck's really nice on this and that. And if I maybe change the neck pickup, then it'd be a really good. I just won't buy the guitar. I'll just wait until I find a guitar that wholly works.
I agree that I don't think I would ever buy a guitar with the intention of modifying it immediately. But I think what often happens is once you've owned a guitar for some time, if you need to kind of rekindle your relationship with that guitar, then sometimes, like we were saying in the past, there's a massive culture of modifications and tweaking, and there's so many companies out there now making great aftermarket parts that if you've had that guitar for 5-6 years or maybe longer, and you think a nice new set of pickups or a nice new whatever, or just to change the look, particularly with Fenders, it's just so easily done. But you're right, I wouldn't do that with a vintage guitar. If it was anything of a certain age, then in my mind, it's a shame. Unless you're going to keep all those parts and you're going to put it all back together. It's there's history in those guitars, isn't there?
Absolutely.
I mean, like my Strats, the council workers broom, but I've replaced bits because I've had to.
That's different. That's another reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to keep playing the guitar. When I bought this guitar, when I bought it, when my mum and dad bought me it when I was 11, it was never the intention of, in a few years I'll put a new neck on this, and then Mum will change the pickups, and there's certain people that are never happy with the guitar, forever tone chasing, and until I mean, Chris, you maybe I've been lucky because I found this Strat, and if I lost any other guitars, I wouldn't care. I'd be happy to play this one guitar for the rest of my life, and I'd be happy with that. But if you haven't found the guitar yet, I suppose you can tinker a little bit. And like Chris, I know you've spent a lot of money on your Strat, haven't you?
Yeah,
I think part of that ties in just to the whole idea of tone chasing. I think all of us are guilty of that to some degree. Some people take it really, really far, but that feeds nicely back into the whole modelling kind of discussion for me as well. Sometimes I suffer from what's it called? Bill's going to jump in and say something funny here.
No, not at all. No, I tell you spending money.
What is it? Option paralysis or something like that.
Opening your wallet.
Oh, well, that as well. Yeah. That. What wallet? I don't have a wallet.
That's true. Yeah.
There's nothing in it, but like when you have too many choices, and I think a part of that can be related back to the modelling side of things. When you've got, I used to find with the Axe effects, when I had too many choices, that endless opportunity to make things better, like doing a gig and thinking, have I got the most out of this? Should I tweak this? When I get home, I'm going to delve into that patch and I'm going to knock 2K down a little. There's that. Some people have that, and I do have that part of my brain, and I think that rolls over into guitars as well. Once you buy a guitar, I've seen this a lot through my customers, during my time in music retail, that constant quest to improve what you've got, both playing wise but also equipment wise and sound wise. And if you've got a guitar and you're thinking, I could maybe eke an extra 10% out of this if I just swapped out the nut for the Graphtec one, or if I just swapped out the saddles, or maybe put a new vintage wiring loom in there. There's that whole part of the industry which is alive and thriving, and I'm okay with that. But again, I probably would keep that separate to the vintage guitar world, which is a very different thing for me, really.
Do you know, I think I would have loved growing up in the 60s and 70s, just because, we spoke about Strats in previous episodes. Back in those days, it was like, what color do you want it in? That was your, they were your options, and I loved that, the simplicity of this is what a Strat is, and I think that's what I was going for with this.
Yeah,
I got everything the way the Strat would have been made, as close to as I could afford to back in the day. Yeah. It's just very basic, to be honest. It cost me a fair bit of money to get it where it is, but to buy an original 60s Strat, it costs an arm and a leg nowadays. So
well, I agree. I know I have that part of my personality, so the way I get around it is very often by just removing those other options. So right now I'm sat here with a Telecaster. It's 2 pickups, 3 position switch, volume and a tone, and I couldn't be happier playing a Telecaster. And very often as well, I am at home on a very simple valve amp with a small pedal board, because in my head there's nothing more I can do. I can't tweak it, I can't change it, so I'm just going to be happy and just going to play. I've got more comfortable with modelling and more comfortable with the Helix. I find the Helix very quick and intuitive. That was one thing I didn't like about the Axe-Fx, the editing part of it. You're looking at like the density of the air between the microphone and the speaker. You're looking at like power amp compression and messing with voltages, and that used to kill my inspiration. Whereas if I could just flick on a little valve amp with like 5 knobs on it, pick up a Telecaster and off you go, I'm happy. I'm happy in playing.
That's the good thing with the Helix, though, isn't it? That when you can delve into all that type of nonsense, but if you want to, like I always do, when you bring up your AC15 model, my go-to amp on the Helix, it already sounds good without you having to do anything. They've already done the hard work for you. They've already put a nice mic on it that would suit that amp. They've already, they've got the sag and the hum as it would be. So, I think that's really good. That Helix have made it really, really simple to get into amp modelling and effects modelling, because what you dial up initially is already sounding good,
Yeah. That's important for a lot of people, I think. Guitar players, just having that ease of access. I always say at home, I need to always have my guitars out. I always need to have my amp or Helix ready to go, everything kind of plugged in, because the more barriers you put in the way of getting to playing, for me, I will get bogged down. I used to get bogged down with the Axe-Fx. I'd sit down with half an hour to learn a new song for the gig at the weekend or get some practice in, and 25 minutes would go by and I'm just messing with like EQs or messing with different cab patches and stuff. Oh no, I haven't even got to the song. I haven't even played any music yet. So it's it's give and take, I guess.
What's good for anyone who wants to keep their setup simple, it doesn't want to go, who just wants to dip a toe into the digital world. I think like the Strymon Iridium amp simulation pedal is really good because it has 3 amp choices: a Fender, Vox, and a Marshall, and it has 3 cab choices for each of those models. But the idea is that you use your existing pedal board running into that as your amplifier, and the results are really good. And it's very simple to use. There's not a ton of bells and whistles on it. It's just a very simple amp simulation pedal, and
is it an expensive
one of the best
thing
on the market? But obviously, going into the HX Stomp, it's the same price as the HX Stomp, which offers a lot more. But again, option paralysis, Lee. As you mentioned, there's so much to learn about it, and so much options for different sounds. But for those who just want to keep it simple, like the Strymon is great. And but I think nowadays there's so much good choice, isn't there? Overall, I think between all of them, it just depends on what you like, what you can afford, what your budget is, what the situation you're in. is really, I suppose.
I remember, Lee, we did a rehearsal once before you got the Helix, and you had some little pedal. What was that? That's amps in pedal, and that sounded really good. You plugged your pedal board into it and went into the desk. Do you remember?
Oh, I do remember. Yeah, funny story about that. That is, of all the pedals that I own, you picked that one. So that's a Joyo.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. Which, for anyone who knows, that's like a cheap Chinese copy. Essentially, what that is actually a Chinese replica of the pedal that you were talking about, Chris. What was the one that you bought?
Sansamp, the Sansamp.
The Sansamp, yeah. So what that is, that was a backup emergency amp simulator. I think it's only got like 2 amp sounds and 2 speaker sounds on it. But I used to carry it around with me because when I was doing amp gigs, I was always, and this is another plus point for the digital gear, you don't have to worry about breaking a valve or a transformer blowing up or something just going wrong.
Forgetting to take the bubble wrap off the valves in the back of your amp, and halfway through a gig, you're like wondering what that smell is, and you turn around and there's a black smoke coming out the back of your amp.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. You definitely
How did you do that, Chris?
Well, we were traveling to Germany, and I thought, well, I don't have any spare valves, so I thought I'd wrap the whole thing in bubble wrap, trying to keep it nice and safe. And halfway through a gig, about an hour in, and like this is you're like, oh, what's that smell? It stinks in it. And like, you turn around, there's black smoke coming out the back of your amp. But that's the one thing you worry about is I did a gig in the Scilly Isles, and my amp went onto like a container that was on the ship, and I got to the gig, took my amp out, and all the valves on the back were smashed. And I was just like, no, I didn't have any spare ones with me. So, but I did have my Sans amp with me at the time, so I ran through the front of house with that, and it sounded okay. But the Joyo thing is very similar to the Sans amp.
Yeah, as far as I could see, I did some research, and the Joyo thing. We all know the Chinese are good at just stealing something and copying
Knocking
it
something
much
up,
cheaper.
yeah.
The Joyo was that. It's just a replica of this Sans amp box that I remembered actually from selling it to Chris. I remember demoing it and listening to it. It's just a way that if your amp goes down, you could just plug your pedal board into that and it will give you a direct feed that you can send to the PA. So I used to carry that around because after doing a few gigs, some quite nice gigs, lugging around this amp, I was thinking, oh my God, what if I got to this gig? We've just driven 200 miles. There's 200 people waiting to be entertained here. If I turn my amp on and it just doesn't come on, I'm going to be doing a Prince all night. It's just going to be de-eyed guitar sounds, just straight, or a rock band, and it's just going to be plinky.
I thought you meant dancing.
I'll tell you what, though,
that comes as standard, Phil.
I turned up to a wedding gig in Cornwall years ago, and like the amount of steps we had to go up, there was no lift, and the amount of steps we had to go up to get to the venue room was ridiculous. So I just left the amp in the van and went direct, pedal board straight into the desk. Sounded dreadful, but everyone had a great time. No one could tell the difference.
And that sums it up nicely.
Yeah.
Should we wrap up? What a note to end on.
We won't get away with it in this show.
So I started this, so I'll end the modelling thing now. So basically it depends. If you're lazy, buy modelling. If you really want to have that on-amp stage type, you want to feel the air coming, then bring your amp and that, because the audience don't give a toss. Do what you want. Yeah, oh, good grief. Okay, well, who's in the hot seat next week then?
It's Chris's turn, and Chris has got some making up to do for it next week, I think. We've had technical issues from Chris today. We've had Chris's corner that was barely Chris's corner. So, Chris, you need to come prepared next week. All eyes are on you, Sonny Jim.
Yeah. All eyes are on you. Yeah. It is a good time to wrap up because I don't know if I've mentioned I feel really ill.
You've caught Chris's man flu from last week, haven't you?
I have. Did I get it down the line or down the web or something?
This 58 I'm talking into is well dodgy. So be careful, Lee.
Oh, I've got a headache. I mean, I'm not one to complain usually, but like I say,
no, never.
I'll soldier on and
a couple of paracetamols, you'll be okay. A good tip as well for anyone who has a cold. An antihistamine, I think, is really good. It's always done wonders for me if I have a cold.
Oh, okay.
So,
there we go. That was almost Chris's corner just in itself. Chris, maybe we need a new section. Chris's medical advice.
No, don't do that.
Only thing is, though, he puts it up his bum. Most people swallow it. Oh dear. Well, thank you very much for listening, guys. We are back obviously next week with Chris in the hot seat. But I'll tell you what, let's do. We haven't done the socials, have we, Lee?
Social majiggies. Yeah. If you want to find us, you can find us on Instagram. Look for Phil Walker Guitar, Chris Anthony Guitar, and Lee Troy Guitar. If you want to find us on Facebook, you can look for Phil Walker guitarist, Lee Williams guitarist, and Chris Anthony guitar. And if you want to find the guitar show itself, you can search for Story of Guitar Heroes on either Instagram or Facebook. You can go to the website, it's www.storyguitarheroes.com, and you can go on YouTube and search for Phil Walker guitarist.
Well, that wraps it up for this week, and
certainly does. Pleasure as always, guys. We need to get better at ending podcasts. I've been listening back, and I'm sure the listeners will agree that we get to the end of a podcast and we sort of go.
Well, I don't know about my excuse this every other time this week. I mean, I don't know if I've mentioned I don't really feel well, so I mean I've struggled to get to this far in the podcast. So I do need to go lie down in a dark room now.
This is a perfect example. We're wrapping up, and yet we're starting another conversation.
I know. Come on, Phil. What could be better than an hour with us? That must have made you feel better.
Yeah, exactly. You'll probably have it next week, Lee, but you'll get it down the web.
Oh, brilliant.
I think I'm getting bird flu. I don't feel well. A lot of people would have just cancelled this Zoom meeting and that we're having now and this podcast, but not me. Oh, no, not me. I'm not one to complain about ailments. I'll just keep going.